finally this Sunday, a parable that makes sense. The servant comes in after working all day long, and like any good master, he doesn't say, sit down and let me serve you. He says, would you put some dinner on the table too? You can eat later, right? That sounds like every boss I've ever had. And I think we can understand that relationship between a boss and a worker. Except it's not a parable. Because this isn't a teaching about God. This is Jesus teaching the disciples about themselves. So if we set up today's reading, Jesus has told them that they have to forgive. They have to forgive not just 7 times, but 7 times 70 times. They're like, oh my gosh, Jesus, this is crazy. How can we do this? Life is too complicated. You're too hard. If only we had more faith. Give us more faith. And Jesus is like, it's not about faith. What a wonderful expression. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could do all these incredible things. That this isn't even about our relationship with God or faith. It's about who we are and whether or not we're able to take responsibility for our actions and whether or not we're able to look reasonably at the world around us. And then he tells the story of us, a servant who comes home and does not reasonably expect to be seated at the table and fed, rather expects to serve because that's who we are. And I think this is a helpful reminder to us when life is hard, when nothing's fair, the kind of reminder of parents who tell their children every time they say it's not fair, then you hear back, life's not fair, right? That there's a good reminder here that when we suffer and when we struggle and when life is hard, we should be more honest. Because we'd love to say, this is about faith, this is about God. God did not create any of the suffering in my life. Almost all of it I created myself, and the rest of it, other people created by not following God's commandments. And so when I struggle, when I have to forgive, when I overcome suffering, I don't get to raise my hand and say, see what a faithful, wonderful person I am. That's just baseline justice, honesty, reality. Faith is something more. Because there's going to be another story that Jesus tells about the faithful steward when the master comes home and sees from his wedding or wherever he was and sees him doing his job and working, that he's going to sit him down at a table and tie on an apron and serve his servant. That was a story about God. That one doesn't make sense because God is beyond our senses. But today's story, not a parable, just a teaching about us, not about God. A teaching about how we might look with more honesty, with more justice, with more understanding at my struggles, my suffering, my sin, and understand that once I've overcome, once I've survived, once I've lived my reality, I don't get to pretend that that made me holy, but rather I need to understand that that just barely made me human.